Hi, I'm Charlotte and this is Bookish Mama Blooms. Hope you like my new intro. Yes, that has taken me a full 2 months to make. It was just, I've just not been filming very much recently, and I'm not going to dwell too much on it because I feel like all my videos start with me saying I haven't filmed, but I haven't, and I've fallen behind. So I kind of had to decide what I was going to do with this. I haven't really talked about March. I didn't really read in March. Maybe it was the anniversary of COVID, I don't know. I would be very interested to hear if you guys had a similar thing happen, but I just couldn't really register a book at that point. But I have done something really exciting in the last month, for me anyway, and I'm sure if you're bookish you'll find it exciting too. One of the things that I always say that I want to do, but I never really do, is follow a book thread. So what I mean by that is when you read a book and it mentions another book or a writer, maybe it's a factual book, so it's mentioning another source, or it's a fictional book and one of the characters is reading a book at the time, and you think to yourself, oh, I'd really love to read that, but then you don't because you've got maybe a TBR, or you don't have that book in your house, or there's a million reasons why you don't. But I actually did it, and I'm on the 4th book in a thread of books, so I'm going to talk you through the ones I've read. The first one is Plain Bad Heroines. That was my phone beeping. Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. And I found out about this through the lovely Shan of the Storytime. She absolutely loved this book. It's a chunker. And there's something really appealing about a book of this size. I'm not put off by books of this size. In fact, if anything, I'm drawn to them. So it's actually, I think the pages are really thick because it's not as long as all that. It's about 600 pages, something like that. But this is a book that is set in a few different timelines. It's gothic, it's a bit of a horror story, it's very plotty, which you know isn't my kind of thing, but that doesn't matter. It says on the back that it's atmospheric, sexy, creepy, full of lesbians and wasps, disturbing and funny and totally addictive. I would agree with all of that. I did about halfway through, I think because this was the book that was trying to get me out of a slump. About halfway through, I got a little bit fed up with it. And then I also wasn't 100% sure if I was excited to read it, and I was kind of addicted to reading it, but I lost my way a little bit. But I think that was probably just my mood. And to be honest, I think any book would have struggled to get me out of that mood. So massive kudos to this book. For I completed it and I read it I think in a week. So I can understand that it might be a bit of a Marmite book, but I really loved it. It was exciting, the characters were interesting, it was just it was a romp. That's the word I like to use. My phone. So in that they mention loads of other things. There's loads of different ways I could have gone with that. It's a very literary kind of plotty book. I decided to go for Truman Capote. He's mentioned in it. I don't know if it's In Cold Blood that's mentioned or Answered Prayers. I can't remember now. But having read Swan Song, which I don't know, I'm just out of shot, last year, I really loved Swan Song, which is sort of like a fictionalised version of him stabbing all of his girlfriends in the back when he was writing Answered Prayers. So I've never read him, but because it was mentioned in here, I thought I'm going to follow the bookish chain. So I read In Cold Blood. I loved this book. I mean, right, so if you haven't read it, or if you know a little bit about it, I mean, the topic is horrific. It's a horrible topic, and I'm not a true crime sort of person. There is something kind of gratuitous about true crime when you work in a bookshop. It's disturbing how much true crime is bought and read. Like, it is, I don't know, it makes me uncomfortable. A little bit. But there are some true crime books that I have read and I have enjoyed them. as much as you can enjoy that sort of thing. This is, if you didn't know what it was about, it's the first, and I use that in inverted commas, non-fiction novel. So Capote wanted to like start a genre, and he did it with this book. I can't really describe how obsessed I was. I basically didn't stop reading for 2 days, and everybody else just had to fend for themselves. And you know that that doesn't happen very often anymore with me. I think the last time that it happened was when I read Stephen Graham Jones's The Only Good Indians, which is also just out of shot, and besides Swan Song, which is quite nice. I was hooked. Stephen was like, you know, I didn't think we were ever going to get you back, because I just sort of read impulsively. I've got so much to say about this book. This is like part of the thing where I think maybe I should start up an actual blog as well, where I can write a physical review, because I have loads of thoughts on this. I then went and watched the film Capote, and we really enjoyed that. Yeah, if it's not truthful, if you go and look into bits of the case, and I would like to read something factual now to sort of really get to grips with it, the stuff he's made up. Does it matter? I don't know if it does, because overall that's not what he's trying to do. I mean, it must have been extremely upsetting for the Clutter family's relatives to read stuff that wasn't true about this horrific act. Yeah, anyway, I would thoroughly recommend this. If you've had this on your shelf, I just can't believe his writing. I thought it was amazing. And you can Google what the plot is if you don't already know. Sometimes I tell you what the plot is, but you know, you can Google that bit. This led me then to Furious Hours, Murder, Fraud and the Last Trial of Harper Lee by Casey, I think Kep, but could be Sepp. And this is one I've had on my shelf since last year, so this was a really good chance to get into that. So there was a nice little hop over to here. So Harper Lee and Truman Capote grew up together. They were very close friends. Harper Lee had, I think she'd submitted the manuscript for To Kill a Mockingbird, and it was going through the processes whilst Capote was researching in Cold Blood. So she went along with him. She was a nobody at the time. She went along with him. She did extensive work to find out retrospectively how much of her notes went into making his book. Was really interesting. And the last portion of this kind of deals with that. But this is about Harper Lee's own second book that she never finished, that was going to be about the real life murders involving this man called the Reverend, who killed several members of his own family and for insurance, basically. I enjoyed this book, and like I say, the parts about In Cold Blood and about Harper Lee's relationship with Capote I really liked, and just sort of like a who's who of who was around at the time was really interesting. But the book was separated into sections, and I kind of see why it had to be. You had to cover the original murders that would inspire Harper Lee. She wanted to make a big personality, the author, make a big personality of the defence lawyer for, well, he becomes the defence lawyer for both the murderer of these people, and then when someone murders him, he becomes their defence lawyer too. Clearly a very reputable guy. That in itself is really interesting, but it requires a whole chapter on him. Then you get a chapter on Harper Lee, and I kind of felt like I was reading 5 different books and they didn't really fit together. Like, not all the information in the first bit was relevant, and also there's so little known about the murders that they just come off as being gratuitous, because I don't know anything about the people that were murdered. So little information. They're horrific, but they didn't make me feel horrified the way that the murders in Cold Blood do, because there's just, I don't know, I think where Harper Lee probably failed, oh look at me judging Harper Lee, is that there wasn't enough information for a book, which is what she said. But where Casey could have come in is maybe found, you know, documentation on similar lives led at the time to try and paint a better picture of these poor women in the most cases, although there was one man, who were murdered, because I was reading about these horrific things, and yet I felt very little, which was horrible. So yeah, I'm not sure. I think it was really good, but for me it was just a little bit too bitty, but you know, I couldn't have done a better job myself, so I'm not going to judge too harshly. But then that, obviously, Harper Lee, led me to reread, and when was the last time I reread something? Maybe a decade ago. I literally can't remember the last time I reread something. So I reread my high school copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't know if you can see. It's a really Heinemann New Windmills. It's not an attractive looking book, I'm not going to lie to you. So this is, I've literally carted this round since I was 15, and I remember reading it at 15 and really loving it. It was one of the first books I really enjoyed reading in school, because, you know, we were doing things like Moonfleet before that, which was a bit boring. Rereading it, and as you can see, I'm not quite finished, is an experience. I don't feel like the racism in here is unpacked when I did it for GCSE, the way that I am unpacking it now. And I mean the racism within the heroes, you know, Scout, Atticus, Dill, who I now know is modelled on Truman, is probably the most empathic character, which is really interesting. Like when you've watched the film about Truman Capote and you've read these books, and he is such a he stabs people in the back, he's a liar, he does all sorts of things that don't make you think of him as being a nice person. But in this, Dill, the young boy, is the only one who really cries for Tom Robinson, and the only one of all the characters to say that black and white are equal in all ways. Even Atticus doesn't say that, and Scout doesn't say that either. There are limits to equality, but for Dill there isn't, which I found really interesting. Anyway, I'm slipping into some kind of postgraduate seminar now, but this, yeah, there's loads to unpick. I can see why people have retrospectively said it's not the classic that everyone's made it out to be, because it doesn't do enough, but it is really beautifully written, and it's a great book club book for now. You know, it's like you could spend hours talking and debating about what Harper Lee was doing in that. So I kind of, once I finish this, I have kind of come to an end of that trail. I don't think I'm going to follow that trail any further, but I would love to know if you've done something similar. My next book, one book that I'm rereading that I cannot see within arm's reach, so if I've got the inclination, I may put a picture up, is Waterfalls of Stars by, oh my gosh, Roseanne Alexander, which was my book of the year about 2 years ago, and that is about the island of Skomer. Now I have started to reread that because I have booked a day trip to Skomer for just under 2 weeks' time, which for me, my husband and Idris and my dad, and I mean this is a huge deal for me because of general anxiety about doing anything like this, and we just did it, we just booked it. So we're gonna drive over there and we are gonna take a boat out to Skomer. So if you followed my channel for ages, you will know how excited I am about this, because that book tore me apart. It was just amazing. It was the scene setting of being on Skomer. I've kind of been in love with that island that I've never seen. And it is really close to me. It is ridiculous how close. You know, it's not like I was reading about something up in Scotland. So there is literally no excuse. And Idris is a bit excited and nervous to go on an island. But we're going in puffin season, so we're going to go see some puffins. So I'm going to read that. And then Mike Alexander, who is her husband, he's just brought a book out about Skomer. So I'm debating whether to get that before we go or whether to save that until afterwards. So I might do a little book trail then. But for me, this organic way of following the books has been way more successful than TBR. And if I'd set it up as a TBR, it wouldn't have happened. Another bing bong. So yeah, let me know if you've done something similar and how that works for you, because I know that there's a whole host of you that hate TBRs as much as I do. I love the idea of them, cannot follow them through at all. Okay, I'm gonna go now. I hope you're all well and you are, I mean, is it snowing with you? Because it's been snowing in the UK and hailing and everything else. It's May and I wore a bobble hat on a walk yesterday. That's ridiculous. Okay, I hope you're keeping well and staying safe. Bye.